Okay, dear friend, today we are going to cover the first block of this course, MSD012, that talks about ecosystem natural resources. As you know, the one major focus is on ecosystem and biodiversity. So in the last session, yesterday, we have looked into the basic concept of ecology and ecosystem. And we have also learned some of the concept of ecosystem services, how it is very important to understand from technical point of view, means from technical point of view to link up with the issues of sustainability. So today, what we are going to discuss is on conserving biodiversity and the present status at global level, right? So before going through the conserving, basic topic on conserving biodiversity, or we can say that to understand the issues of biodiversity conservation, for biodiversity conservation or conserving the biodiversity, we need to understand the basic concept about the biodiversity, right? So, biodiversity, the meaning itself, the word itself reflected the meaning. Bio means life, diversity means diverse form, multiple, then heterogeneous, multiple numbers. So as per the definition of biodiversity given in the Convention on Biological Diversity, that is, since you are a student of sustainability science, you assume that you have basic idea about different convention and protocols which is related to environment. So of one of those convention protocol is Convention on Biological Diversity, and the Article 2 of that CBD, biological diversity is explained or giving the meaning of biological diversity is the variability among living organisms from all sources, including inter alia, terrestrial, marine, and other aquatic systems, and the ecological complexes of which they are part. So this includes diversity within the species, between species, and of ecosystem. When in a simple language, if you define biodiversity as variety and variability of living organisms, so it can be looked into three levels of component, as it's also reflected in the definition given by the Convention of Biological Diversity. There are genetic diversity, means diversity within the species. We have all the, explained this concept of species in the last session. So then species diversity and ecosystem diversity. Genetic diversity is the numerous varieties of rice. It may be rice with different traits in the same species. Then varieties of rose, varieties of any of the plants, specific plants or animals. Some of the example is indicated here is, now you will see in the background image also here in the same plant, and you will see different colors. That's called genetic diversity. In the cows also, if you travel across India, you will find out different varieties of cows and different varieties of buffaloes. In the flowers, in the rose, you will find out different the varieties of rose with different colors. You can apply in different species. For example, in cropping plant also, rasma, you will have different variety of rasma. So that's the, how you have to understand the genetic diversity. Then the next is species diversity. As you know, species is at a particular population there where they can interbreed, or they can be, breed among themselves. Okay, so this species diversity, if you simply define in a simple language, since we are from different backgrounds, so when we are trying to understand the sustainability, and when ambassador of sustainability, our objective is to explain whatever our technical understanding in a simple language to the stakeholders. It may be in the policymaker, it may be in the general public. So the spectacular differences in form, size, and other features among different species. For example, we have cow, you will buffalo, goat, horses, and different varieties of plants, flowers. They are called species diversity. So if you're going to in your kitchen garden, you are going to in your crop field, you will find out different varieties of crops, vegetables. That's called species diversity. In the same way, if you are traveling, you are going to a park, or you're going to a natural forest, you will find out different varieties of plants and birds and insects and so on. They are called species diversity. That number is called species diversity. And other level of biodiversity is, when we know that there is differences among the species, that is genetic diversity. Then then we have species, we have different species, that's called species diversity. Then the third level biodiversity, you can see the striking differences among large aggregate of habitats of different species occupying large areas with some common distinctive features that we call as ecosystem. So the diversity of those ecosystems is called as ecosystem diversity. If you look into a broader landscape, we will find out in a landscape, we'll find out, see here also you will find out here, wetland area, hill, you'll see hill, mountain. If you look from this is a photo from an aeroplane, you will find out this river is here, and forest is here, and the other side, it's all called ecosystem diversities. All the photos are taken by myself. So this is the level of biodiversity ecosystem level. And this ecosystem diversity can be looked into three important perspectives. They are alpha diversity, beta diversity, and gamma diversity. What is alpha diversity? Alpha diversity indicates diversity within the community or ecosystem. Now we know what is community, what is ecosystem. That is diversity in that particular ecosystem or in a community. It refers to the diversity of organisms sharing the same community or habitat. Means it may be in a forest, it may be in ecotonal zone, or it might be in a pond ecosystem or in a river ecosystem. So a combination with species, that's alpha diversity, means number of species present in that particular ecosystem or in that particular community. That's called alpha diversity. It sometimes it is a reflection of a species richness, evenness, or unevenness. Then the another perspective we look here for ecosystem diversity is beta diversity. It indicates diversity between communities or ecosystem, species frequently sense when habitat or community changes. No. For example, here in the background, we'll see in this mountain ecosystem, you will find with that of the gradient increase altitude. If you look vertically, if you move from the lower hill up to the higher, means from the foothill to the top, you will find out change in diversity, right? This is called as beta diversity, right? When species composition, you will have seen the change in species composition with respect to different other, characteristic like environment and altitude, and this is called beta diversity. Then gamma diversity is refers to the diversity of habitats over the total landscape of geographical area. You will find out in geographical area how many ecosystems are here. diversity of that ecosystem in that broader landscape. So these are the three important perspectives of ecosystem diversity. All these concepts needs to be understood when you are trying to, understand the sustainability, when we are talking about the relation between ecosystem and human. So that's why we need to understand these basic concepts. As you know, how biodiversity was evolved. We have learned all these basics when we are studying in our classes, beginning from the high school level till, if you are from biological background, and then you study and details, especially started from 10 plus 2, your master onward. So we know that formation of planet Earth took place about 4.5 billion years ago when a part of sun separated from it. So within the first living organism appeared in the ocean is about 3.5 to 4 billion years ago. Those first of living organisms are the bacteria-like organism, and so we term as in prokaryotes, which do not have organelles and nucleus and feed on organic compounds dissolved in water. Then the first eukaryotic, then prokaryotic, this bacteria, prokaryotes, is followed by eukaryotic microorganism that's emerged in 1.8 billion years ago. Then in 1.1 billion years ago, the simple sexual reproductive strategies were replaced with a more complicated process that's called sexual reproduction, which is based on DNA repairing mechanism. So you just look into 3.5 billion years ago, how did life process of evolve of life started? Then in 1.1 billion years ago, then that we started, you will see the organism with sexual reproduction. Then about 600 million years ago, the first metazoans or multicellular that's algae were recorded, followed by the first invertebrate metazoan. Then a burst in speciation, creation of new species from existing species called speciation occurred, leading to the first evolution of the first primitive fish and vertebrates. Now, 600 million years ago, then the fish, the first fish and the vertebrates, animal with that internal skeleton, that about 500 million years ago started to emerge. Then life form existed only in water till 500 million years ago, which is shielded them from UV radiation. Meanwhile, at the high altitude in the atmosphere, then what happened in the atmosphere? You will see the oxygen molecule started forming ozone molecule by absorbing high energy content of ultraviolet radiation. Right. In this course of time, the layers quantities of ozone were accumulated in the air strata of the atmosphere, created a shield against the harmful effects of UV radiation. No, before there was UV radiation, you will see, there was a complete, after that UV radiation still was there in the ozonosphere, in that, then you will find this suddenly organism started to live on land. Because before that, before the ozone layer, protective layer was not formed, and then because of ultraviolet radiation, that living organism were not able to survive in the land. So life started from the water. So about 440 million years ago, first plants followed by invertebrate and vertebrate started colonizing the land. Slow fusion of a continent into single landmass. This is very important. Pangaea. Reduce the length of coastline and coastal habitat availability, thus motivated the organism to move towards terrestrial landmasses. So that geological phenomenon is also related with your, organism started to colonize in that landmasses. However, not all marine phyla attempted success that in doing so. The most successful group that developed on land in an enormous variety of similar form is the insect. All the marine organisms, they are not successful. They try to come to the land masses, but they do not successful. So they were successful. So about 200 million years ago, this particular tectonic accounted for the steep rise in diversity. Because in the process of tectonic activities, volcanoes and a lot of nutrients, that fuse out from the Earth's core. So this form a variety of terrestrial and aquatic biogeographical barriers that effectively isolated previously connected population and thus increase the rate of speciation. Moreover, the process also created a huge spatial diversity in terms of geographical and climatic parameters, which resulted in the evolution of rich biodiversity across the globe. This is how the life started, how the biodiversity is. We see the diversity in the biological life. These are the processes, natural processes, which created diversity in the life forms. So in the past 400 million years, marked by periodic massive loss of diversity known as mass extinction events happened during the last several thousand years ago. Humans have drastically modified the environment, severely depleting the species diversity. At present, there are about 1.7 to 1 million species that have been identified, mostly small creatures such as insects. Scientists hold the view that there are 3 to 100 million species. Even we are not able to explore all the species in this biosphere. If you look into this data, you will see the present status of biodiversity. Present status of biodiversity. Bacteria, 400 described species, estimated total species 1 lakh. So in total, approximately dispersed, we have 7,400 species, described species, and we assume that 1,400,000 species must exist. So, at the same time, you will see what we have said, that the evolution is going on even in the process because of human interference. A number of species has been extinct, and some of the species are in the risk of extinction. You will see in this data, which is published by this Dice et al. In Science magazine in 2019, you will see the fungi. We have 140,000 fungi, right? Red green algae, and then the plants, we have 420,000 plants and other dicots. So this percentage of species threatened with extinction, this red, the most of the thing, for example, even here in say cycads, most of the percentage of population so far discovered is, threatened with extinction. And conifers also, it must be 1/3. Monocots, a little bit. Legumes also a little bit, because this is the legumes we are using, monocots and legumes. That may be the region the extinction rate is, as compared to other, other cycles, the extinction is very less. Rate is less. So in the same way, you will find out dragonfly, cone snails. This data shows that the rate of extinction is very high. So we have to understand, even we are not explore the available, that species exist in the biosphere, but extinction started through our human, due to human activities. So this is also estimated rates of extinction. The species reach estimates about 1 million. See, this is very important. 1 million species between 1975 to 2000. About percentage of global loss per decade is 4% from 1975 to 2000 in 25 years, and 15 to 20% of species between 1980 to 2000. So I to 11. From 1975, you talk from if you calculate from 1975 to 2000, it is 4,000. But from within a span of 5 years, difference of 5 years, 1980 to 2000, it is I to 11. In that way, this data shows that rate of extinction is increasing with the increase of years, right? So these are the empirical data. I will not go in detail. This compilation from a different publication you can look into. The slide which we are going to upload in our BIAS portal. Then this is a quick introduction into the extinction and number of available species or explored species in the biosphere. Now, let us look into how biodiversity across the world are distributing. So we divide that looking into the pattern of biodiversity exists across the globe. We divide that, or we divide it into two important region. One is biodiversity hotspots, the other is megadiversity countries, to understand that pattern of biodiversity that is available across the globe. What is biodiversity hotspot? In 1988, how the concept come up? Let us have a quick look into that. In 1988, British ecologist Norman Myers published a seminal paper identifying 10 tropical forest hotspots. They identified some tropical forests as hotspots. These regions were characterized both by exceptional levels of plant endemism, as levels of habitat loss. Endemism means that particular species will not exist in other part of the world except in that particular ecosystem, in that particular environment. Then the conservation, it is followed by the Conservation International adopted Mayer's hotspots as institutional blueprint in 1989. And in 1996, the organization made a decision, that Conservation International made a decision to undertake a reassessment of the hotspot concept, including an examination of whether key areas had been overlooked or not. 3 years later, an extensive global review was undertaken, which introduced quantitative threshold for designation of biodiversity hotspots and resulted in designation of 25 hotspot area. So in 2005 means 2005, an additional analysis brought the total number of biodiversity hotspots to 34, based on the work of nearly 400 specialists across the world. So in 2011, the forest of East Australia was identified as 35. Now it is 36 hotspots in February 2016, by adding the North American coastal plain as one of the hotspot areas. Okay. So what is the concept for biodiversity hotspot area? So to qualify as a biodiversity hotspot area, a region must meet two strict criteria. It must be at least 1,500 vascular plants as endemic, which is to say it must be a high percentage of plant life form nowhere else on the planet. So a hotspot, in other words, is replaceable. In India, like some of the species, like in the Himachal, Pinus wallachia, that species is not, it is endemic to Himachal area. Like in Manipur, we have Lilium neclini, like brow-antlered deer, and other species, more species in Assam. So that shows that kind of species, which is irreplaceable, that must have in that particular ecosystem. So it must have 30% or less of its original nature vegetation. In other words, it must be threatened by human activities. So around the world, 36 areas noted qualify hotspot. They represent 2.4% of Earth's land surface, but they support more than half the world plant species as an endemic. See, in only 2.4% of the Earth's land surface, and they support more than half of the world's plant species as the endemic, which is only we explore, of that we have explored. So that is species found no place elsewhere. It's nearly 43% of bird, mammals, reptiles, and amphibian species is endemics in that particular in the 2.4% of the upland surface. That means in that hotspot. So this is the map of hotspots area. The 36 biodiversity hotspots 1988 onward, these are the list of biodiversity hotspots. You'll see, and the Eastern Himalaya also is there, Indo-Burma, Himalaya, that Philippines. So total, we have, as of now, we have 36 hotspots. The concept of mega-diverse countries. Mega-diverse countries are those that house the largest indices of biodiversity. Here, it doesn't bother about not only about your endemism, it's talk about the largest indices of biodiversity, high number of biodiversity, including a large number of endemic, not only endemic species. This concept was first proposed in 1988 by Russell Mittermeier, and is now used to raise the awareness to the protection of natural biodiversity, particularly in countries where this is more abundant and threatened. So in accordance with the World Conservation Monitoring Center, for a country to be considered mega diverse, it must have at least 5,000 endemic plants. Here, at least. And the case of this hotspot, it must have at least 1,500 vascular plant as endemic. But in case of mega diversity, it considers only 5,000 endemic plants and must have marine ecosystem within its borders. Okay, so World Conservation Monitoring Center of the UNEP program, UNEP, has identified a total of 17 mega diverse countries. They are Australia, Brazil, China, Colombia, Ecuador, United States, Philippines, India, Indonesia, Madagascar, Malaysia, Mexico, Papua New Guinea, Peru, Democratic Republic of Congo, South Africa, and Venezuela. And recently, few countries, majority of the countries, they form, like-minded this country. Formed in 2002, and that is by 14 of the 70 megadiverse countries, they have LMMC. Additional countries, like-minded megadiversity countries, was formed in 2002. Then additional countries joined. Now from 17, it increased to 20 in 2016. And that same year, the LMMCs formally adopted a Carta to achieve IG biodiversity target element. So this is how global common effort is trying to conserve or for the conservation of biodiversity. Or we can say we're conserving biodiversity through different efforts and or through global common efforts. As we have already talked about uses and importance of biodiversity, when we talked yesterday about the ecosystem, value of ecosystem, so we will not go in detail because, as you know, biodiversity gives goods or provisioning services, cultural services, ecological services like supporting and regulating services. Okay. So this is how ecosystem and socioeconomic system are interrelated through ecosystem services, the drivers that affect to maintain the ecosystem services. When we talk about ecosystem services, definitely it is also talking about biodiversity, value of biodiversity. As we know that biodiversity is losing, and because of that, we're accessing biodiversity, accessing the loss of biodiversity. And in fact, a number of agrobiodiversity losses also happening. So some of the we are going to look into, let us have a quick look into what are the strategies we are following to cope up with this. Ankit, please don't do it. Okay. How we have to, we are trying to cope up with this particular loss of biodiversity or to minimize biodiversity loss. for conservation of biodiversity. So, you know, some of the author look this as the causes of biodiversity loss age, hippo. First, habitat loss is invasive species from one ecosystem to another ecosystem, pollution, then population growth of human, then overconsumption. These are the basic causes of biodiversity loss. If you look into how aggressively human becomes keys to human activities is the basic keys to biodiversity loss. If you look into this figure, you will see from 1970s onward, the gross domestic production of different countries, you will see here, developing, least developed country, you know, this gross domestic product is increasing. Means you are utilizing or exploiting the natural resources. In other words, when these natural resources, we can say that biodiversity. Then that is GDP. Then if you look into domestic material consumption, means your way of material consumption of resources is also increasing, except in this developed countries, it shows by 2010, after 2010 to 2000, they are decreasing. I don't know what will be the factor. I'm sharing this. I will share this publication. You will also look at that publication very easily. So then extraction of biomass, living biomass for domestic consumption and exports is also increasing in all the different categories of the world. And if you look into the average, world average, it is increasing. Okay? Irrespective of what is happening, different type of countries, mean developing, and least developed country, all this gross domestic product, domestic material consumption, extraction of living biomass, this is increasing from 1970s till to 2020, right? In the same way, we have, as we know, that global common effort. We are taking basic efforts to taking care of conserving biodiversity. Here you will see protection of key biodiversity areas. If you look into that, you know, from the if you look into this world global average, the developing and least developed country is below the decreasing. If you look into their performance, air pollution, up to some extent, air pollution is also decreasing. If you look from a different category of countries, or in world average, it is also more or less. Then use of fertilizer is increased. So this is how we are affecting, creating a situation of losing the biodiversity. So here we'll see what are the drivers, the indirect drivers and direct drivers in declines in nature means biodiversity. See, demographic and socio-culture, that is indirect driver, means when your population is increased, and socio-cultural, demographic and socio-cultural means your social structure and cultural, your way of your culture is also affecting to the direct drivers of terrestrial, freshwater, marine ecosystem, institution, governance, conflict, and epidemics. These are the indirect drivers. Direct drivers line means land use change, then direct exploitation, the global phenomenon of climate change, pollution, invasive alien species, and others. These have a direct impact into different ecosystem, terrestrial, freshwater, and marine ecosystem that gives to decline in natural production, or we can say biological biodiversity. Here we'll see that 47% of natural ecosystem have declined by on an average, okay, to relative to their earlier estimated state. Here you will see species extinction risks. Approximately 20% of species are already threatened with extinction in most animal and plant groups that so far studied. A number of, we are not able to explore all the existing species. Ecological communities also, it is declined by 23% on average in terrestrial communities only. That biotic integrity, we need to understand integrity of species. That's also decreases. Then biomass species abundance also fallen by 82%. The nature for entire indigenous communities play an important role. That's we have to understand. So that's why number of organizations, as you know, number of organizations in international level, we are trying to fight with this biodiversity laws, which is created by ourselves. So to minimize the impact of this loss of biodiversity, a number of initiative, conservation program, and many more are taken place. IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Natural Resources, is one of such organization, and this organization identify species based on that level of extinction or in danger. They are extinct in the wild. These are categories. No, you will find out that. So you will see already extinct in the wild, but exists in your and local area. In threatened categories, it is critically endangered, vulnerable, the near threatens about threatened, and these are the categories proposed and we are using IUCN red list, right? So the definition is the definition of those category, as you know, it is also given your study material. Let us not look into definition again. Let us look into the current global extinction risks in different species group. I'm more interested in sharing the latest data instead of going back to the basic, which all the study already there in the study material. I assume that most of us know the basic concept meaning of those categories. So you will see here, beneficiaries estimate of percentage threatened. So you will see vulnerable, these different colors indicate different level of categories of IUCN. Beneficiaries, gastropods, birds, dragonflies, ferns and relative monocots, reptiles, mammal, crustaceans, shark and rays, coral reefs, corals means reforming, conifer, dicot, amphibian, cycad. We'll see. Extinct in the wild, it's already crosses about, it must be about the cycad. In cycad, you must have seen that it must be more than 1%, right? In the same way, you look into the percentage of those species at under the category of IUCN reach. Okay. Since 1,500 number of extinction rate, cumulative percent of species driven extinct, 1,500. It is increasing. The cumulative percentage, amphibians, suddenly 1,000 after 1900, it shoot up to approximately about 2.4%, right? Then fishes, it shoot up about to be 1%. Mammals. Then, there's changes in climate, changes in environment is known because of our intervention, like whatever we discuss about because of the human population, changes land use, land cover, change in that ecosystems, structure and function. So this gives another phenomenon that declines in species survival. So if you look into data from 1980 onward, decline in species survival since 1980, you will see that's rate of decline. But up to some area corals, that's they are suddenly 1995 species survival was 1%. Now This is the level of the biodiversity, the status of present biodiversity, scenario of biodiversity across the world. Then how we have to look that loss of biodiversity from the perspective of SDGs. You know, we have already talked about sustainable development goals, and a few goals. Hence, we can say most of the goals are directly related to your biodiversity or ecosystem. Let us take an example of no poverty. So for no poverty, you know, we need to eradicate extreme poverty, some of the selected targets. So to achieve those targets, we need to have a strong foundation of natural resources, ecosystem services, biodiversity. So unfortunately, the status and trend aspect of nature's contribution to people that support progress towards target is here. No, poor or declining support, this ensure that all have equal right to economic resources. The resources is not equally distributed. Access is not equally distributed. Because when you are trying to, this is an example, if you want to achieve no poverty, equal access to economic resources that gives economic values should be there. But unfortunately, though, in one side, the rate of species extinction is high, but in other side, access to the people is not equally distributed. In the same way, we will look into this table, which is compiled by IPBS in 2019. We will see what the status, the latest status with reference to selected SDGs. So here also, like below water, you know, same, yeah. So you can look into. That's why we need to conserve biodiversity. How conservation is looking. So let us look. Let us have a quick look into different approaches to biodiversity conservation. The international effort, again, like this quickly, let us have a quick look into the international efforts to conserve biodiversity. What are the biodiversity conservation efforts in India, and what are the challenges meeting goals of biodiversity conservation? You know, if we look into the a quick look into the basic conservation strategy, we have in situ conservation, ex situ conservation. In situ conservation in that particular wild area, ex situ is scattered, but it's maintained with our direct intervention. So in situ conservation, we have protected area network, like sacred groves, sacred lakes, biosphere reserve, national park, wildlife sanctuaries. And then in biosphere reserve, we have marine reserve, terrestrial reserve. And actually too, we have sacred plants, home garden, seed bank, field zin bank, cryopreservation, botanical garden, and zoological gardens, aquaria, etc. So these are the basic conservation strategies we follow. And we have a number of conventions to work for conservation of biological diversity of those. Some of them are Convention on Biological Diversity, you know, CBD, that happened in 1992. We have that Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora CITES, Convention on Conservation of Migratory Species of Wild Animals. Then all this information you will get in CBD site. Also, you can explore. But let us have a quick look into this listing of this convention which is related to biodiversity, so that when you are doing something, when reading something, that you keep in your mind, because we have all the international communities have a common effort for conserving the biodiversity. So we have the International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture, Convention on Wetland, as we know, it's Ramsar Convention, World Heritage Convention, the International Plant Protection Convention, International Whaling Commission. All these protocols and convention have, each convention has its specific objective and for the conservation of biological conservation. The recent one, you will see Nagoya Protocol that focus on access and benefits sharing. That's why we're talking about SDGs when we discuss about relation with in that SDGs, we're talking about whether we are able to achieve it or not. Then the Cartagena Protocol on protocol is on biosafety. Then the Nagoya Kuala Lumpur that supplement to protocol on liability and redress to the Cartagena Protocol on biosafety. These are some of the key convention protocol. As you know, we observed 2010 as International Year of Biodiversity to aware about value and the need for conservation of biodiversity. It was observed by United Nations across the world, and this year, this decade from 2011 to 2020, it is declared as United Nations Decade on Biodiversity with an objective of living in harmony with nature. So these are some of the global efforts at different level from conservation, scientific way of conservation, different level. So if you look into so far from International Day of Biological Diversity, we have 22nd May as observed as International Day for Biological Diversity, and from 2002 onward, we observe, or we can say that's International Day of Day for Biological Diversity in different themes, starting from dedicated to forest biodiversity. In 2020, it was our solution, are in nature. Now, latest one is we realized that everything the issues we are having, whatever we're talking about, human well-being, what we have studied, we learn in context of sustainability, everything the solution is in nature. That is what is the theme in this, what was the theme in the year 2020, International Day for Biological Diversity. Then some organization like IPBS, means Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity Ecosystem Services, which is an independent intergovernmental body established by states to strengthen science policy interface with biodiversity ecosystem services for the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity, long-term human well-being, sustainable development, which was established in 2012 by 1994 government. But it is not a United Nations body. However, at the request of the IPBS plenary and with authorization of United Nations Environment Program Governing Council in 2013, that the UNEP provides secretariat service to IPBS. So these are some of the global efforts under the umbrella of that UN and beyond the at the umbrella with initiative of the collaboration of different states and governments across the world. Then recently, again, and then under that, after that, IUCN struggle implement that IUCN red list data, means categorization of species based on that level of that particular vulnerability. Then they have proposed IUCN protected area category system, which define as a geographical space recognized, dedicated, and managed through legal or other effective means to achieve the long-term conservation of nature with associated ecosystem service and cultural value. Yet the question comes, we used to identify the species on the level of vulnerability or extinction, but now we need to look those goals from that from the point of holistic approach of ecosystem conservation. That's why they have categorized, they start look into protected areas, and it is categorized in 6 management categories. First one, that is the first category have 2. One is strict nature reserve, that is strictly protected for biodiversity and also possible geological, geomorphological features. Now the question comes, it is not only about protecting or conserving biodiversity, it is also talking about your physical abiotic component. Then that under 1B, wilderness area. One is strict nature reserve, under another one is under the subcategory is wilderness area, actually large unmodified or slightly modified areas. Then we have that under that category, the second category is national park. Large natural, rare natural areas protecting large scale ecological process with characteristic species in ecosystem, which also have environmentally and culturally spiritual, scientific, educational, recreational, and visitors opportunity, right? Then third category is natural monuments or feature. The fourth category is habitat or species management area. The fifth category is protected landscape or seascape. The sixth is protected areas with sustainable use of natural resources. You have to allow the use of natural resources, because without utilization of resources, you will not be able to, bring the human well-being. The point is that we have to keep the relation. So under IUCN, and recently they have also another IUCN green list of protected and conserved areas. There are currently 258,608 designated protected areas recorded in world data on protected areas. Of these, most of the areas on land, and that is equivalent to 15% of the Earth land surface, and 7.6% of the world ocean is under marine protected areas. Cool. So under this green list of protected and conserved areas also, the IUCN is trying to conserve biodiversity, biological diversity at the fullest. So, these are more that we have already talked about all these. Then let us have a quick look into biodiversity conservation in India, right? We have national park, I'm sharing only the latest status of that. We have a number of 1970s. Before that also we have started species level. Keystone, first we started Keystone, conservation of Keystone species like Project Tiger, Project Elephant, Project Rhinoceros, Project Deer, and so on. You will find a number of things, and we have a number of environmental conservation act like Forest Conservation Act, Wildlife Conservation Act, National Environment Policy, and many more. So I will not go in detail here. Let us have a quick look into the present status. So as on August 2020, this is from the website of the INVI Center of Wildlife Institute of India, that's taken care about this particular objective of compilation of information. Okay, we have reserve sites in India that focus on tiger reserve, elephant, biosphere reserve, Ramsar wetland sites, because wetlands also needs to be preserved, natural world heritage site, cultural world heritage site, mixed world heritage site, important coastal and marine biodiversity areas, marine protected areas, important bird areas, potential important bird areas, key biodiversity areas, biodiversity heritage sites. In fact, if you look into all this, way of conservation strategy, it is very dynamic. If you look into whatever we discussed in the presentation I have mentioned before, this is a evolution. It is a way of evolution. It's very dynamic. If you look into IUCN, also if you look into CBDA point convention of biological, that also, but even in Indian context also. It is the protected areas network. You will see 20 by in 2019 December till 2019 must be 2019 December. We have a total number of national parks 101, and area cover 40,564 square kilometer. The total area that we have different categories of protected areas, national parks, wildlife sanctuary, Then community reserve means we call as community reserve forest, conservation reserve, then protected areas network. So I will not go in detail about this definition and meaning. So this is the total that is increasingly, that's increased. If you look into that, the number is increasing. Number increasing means the areas also increase. Right. So our efforts, we tried in our national level, we tried on our best level to conserve our biodiversity at different level by implementing different policies and programs. So if you look into protected areas of India, you will see total square kilometer coverage of the country. Now up we have 5.02% of geographical areas is under protected areas. Okay, national geographical areas is under protected areas. This figure shows, uh, of that percentage area under forest cover of the total geographical area is 21.54%. That's what we discussed yesterday, which surveys and initiated things. It should be 30 to 33%, but unfortunately, we are having 21.5%. Then Ramsar wetland site. So wetland site, Ramsar wetland site, we have, as of now, we have 41 Ramsar site till December 2020. So these are a few of the references. I hope I am able to, give latest, whatever the possible way, latest data, information that is related to conservation of biodiversity. Some of the issues I have avoided looking into that our, from sustainability point of view only, I have touched upon only a few of the basic areas we have discussed. So with this,